I'm gonna address a few points that people brought up on my Acting Black, Acting White video. I may end up addressing a few other things. I'll just have to see what happens. Jumping right into it, a lot of people were saying that the reason they reject the notions of acting black and acting white is because many times acting black is equated with something negative. Well, that is very true, but my last video was meant to address a very specific situation. I was talking about people like Paul Wall who act, dress, and talk a certain way, but then when people tell them that they're acting black, they act like they don't know what they mean. And it also addressed black people who like to make videos asking, why do people always say I act white? Is it because I talk proper? Is it because I listen to rock music? Is it because all my friends are white? You know, they'll just say a whole bunch of stupid shit. And a lot of times in those videos, it sounds like the person is bragging or trying to elevate themselves. But anyway, those are the two situations that my video was meant to address. Now, what about people referring to acting black as in doing something negative? Like, for example, gangbanging, or being on welfare, or being loud, being lazy, being poor, or whatever else you can come up with. And on the flip side, referring to acting white as positive things such as getting an education, being rich, being beautiful, being smart, and whatever else you can think of. Well, first of all, you kinda gotta look at who's saying it. The only people who have ever told me that I act white has been black people. Now, perhaps some of you black people out there have been told by white people that you act white, but for me, it's always been black people who have said that to me. What white people do say to me is that you don't act like the other blacks. In case you're asking, well, what's the difference? I'll have to say, not a whole hell of a lot except for the intent. When a white person says something like you don't act like the other blacks, they're attempting to compliment you. However, usually when a black person says you act white, they're either trying to shame you or insult you. First of all, just about every non-white race has a term for people who are of that race but supposedly act white. For non-black, non-white Latinos, it's coconut. Brown on the outside, white on the inside. For East Asians, the term is banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And of course, for black people, it's Oreo. Black on the outside, white on the inside. These are not names that white people gave to non-white people. These are names that the non-white people call each other. And a lot of times, if a black person, for example, is doing something that some other black people don't like, they'll try to shame that person by saying that that person is acting white, or that they think they're white. Or if that black person is doing something that the other black people feel that they should be doing, or wish that they could be doing, again, they'll try to put that Oreo label on you. For example, if somehow you are able to leave the hood, whether it's because you came into a large sum of money or because you got a better job or whatever, but anyway, you leave the hood and move to the suburbs where most of the people there are white, some black people will try to shame you by saying, oh, you think you're white now. Well, your neighbors are going to call you nigger behind your back and the police are still going to stop you, and all that kind of stuff. Or if you put your daughter in ballet lessons, another black parent might say, well, I'd never put my kid in ballet lessons. I want my kid to be around other black kids. Which could be a legitimate concern, or they might be trying to make themselves feel better about not being able to afford their children those kinds of extras. Or if you're a black kid in high school, and you're trying to listen to the teacher and there's some other black kids in the class who are goofing off and making noise, and you tell them, hey, could you quiet down, I'm trying to listen, the other kids very well may come back with something like, oh, you're just acting white. But it has nothing to do with concern about you losing your identity or forgetting where you came from. You're doing something that they know that they should be doing, so they're trying to shame you and pull you back with them. Black people know that black people are sensitive to being called white, or any insinuation that they're trying to be like white people. When you tell a black person that they're acting white, basically what you're telling them is that they don't like who they are, so they're trying to be something else. And black people tend to be very sensitive to that, especially given the history that blacks have with whites in this country. And that's why calling a black person white is a very frequently used shaming tactic. And it's used not just for when black people really are acting white, but it can be used for just plain old doing something the other black people don't like. You change your hair color or perm your hair, you want to be white. You name your son Tyler, you want to be white. You're a black person dating a white person, you want to be white. Or it could be that you're just trying to succeed, they'll call you white. It's because that they don't like that you're getting ahead and leaving them behind. They expect white people and other races to leave them behind, but when black people start leaving them behind, that really shows them up. So that's when the shaming starts. But like I said before, this isn't just a black thing. And I have one example that doesn't involve a black person. There used to be a show on MTV, or maybe it still exists, I don't watch MTV anymore, but there used to be a show at least called Making the Band, and I watched the season in which O-Town was put together, and there was a Hawaiian kid in the running named Ikaika. I'm telling this story from memory, so if I don't get every detail right, don't pounce on me. But from what I remember, Ikaika's older brother wasn't too crazy about his little brother being in a boy band. And again, I'm telling this story from memory, but I think basically the whole time his older brother was trying to get him to drop out and come home. But anyway, I remember one specific phone conversation that Ikaika had with his older brother, in which his older brother just flat out said to him, "You sound really white right now." And Ikaika says, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "I don't know, you just sound really white." And I think that was such a bitch move. He was trying to hint to his brother that he was selling out or forgetting who he was. But anyway, I don't think it was specifically that conversation that did it, but eventually Ikaika did drop out and go home. Now, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes with Ikaika and his brother, but either way, that's why I say you gotta be careful about embracing people just because they're black or just because they're in your family. Not every black person has your best interest at heart, or even the same interest, and that includes your family too. So yes, a lot of times when black people feel that a certain black person is showing them up or doing things that they want to do but can't, they will try to shame them by calling them white. Alright, another scenario in which black people call other black people white is when a certain black person may have accomplished certain things, or they have certain things or whatever, and therefore they have this superior sedity attitude. They act like they're better than everybody else, which is an attitude that black people often associate with white people. So yeah, sometimes people like that do get called white. Alright, and then the third situation in which black people call other black people white is when they actually do act white. Or for black people who aren't used to being around people who aren't black, if they see a black person who's not acting the way they're used to seeing black people act, I think what's going through their head is that, okay, here's a person that looks like me, but they don't act like me, and I don't like it, or I don't know how to react to them. But anyway, those are the only 3 scenarios that I came up with off the top of my head, so if I missed anything, just let me know. Just to recap what I said, it's used as a shaming tactic, it's used for black people who act like they're better than other black people, and it's used for black people who talk like or do things that white people are more likely to do. Now, as for when a white person says you don't act like the other blacks, or that you act white, I find that usually when a white person says this, it's a misguided attempt at a compliment. One thing that sucks about being a black person is that we're not individuals. I know we think we are, but we're not to other people. We're one big but cohesive group of people who all know each other, and we all dance, all sing, all do this or that, and unfortunately, the reputation of our group is made by the worst of us instead of the best of us or even the average of us. And also you have to remember that black people are only 12% of the population, and black people tend to pool in certain areas and cities. So that means that there are a lot of white people and other people out there who do not have up close and personal contact with black people on a regular basis. So they get their idea of what black people are from the media. And I think we all know that our media image is shot to fucking hell. They turn on the news and they see things like Darion Albert getting beat to death by a bunch of other black kids. They see mugshots of black people who have done this or done that. They'll see a supposedly positive story about community outreach or helping out poor people, and all those people will be black, or maybe they might be Latino. They'll see people like Antoine Dodson, the quintessential ghetto witness. But it's not just the media. If certain non-black people don't have a lot of contact with black people, but then when they do, they come in contact with a negative black person, that, coupled with what they see in the media, shapes their opinion of what it means to be quote-unquote black. Unfortunately for black people, the worst among us get the most attention and are the most visible. I'm sure that at some point, most of you have seen that video called Soldier Girl. It's a video of a young black woman probably in her late teens or early 20s, and she's freaking out on a train. Now, there were a lot of white racists who posted this video, and they would call it things like chimp out or this is how black women act or stuff like that. But if you watch the video, and I mean all of it, not just the parts that prove that black people act crazy, you will see that most of the other people on that train, if not all of them, were also black, and all of the other black people were either sitting down calmly or trying to de-escalate Soldier Girl. See, people don't notice those black people because they're sitting down, not drawing attention to themselves. They do, however, notice the one nut out of 100. A person could be walking home and pass 50 black people with no incident. But if they have a problem with one black person out of 50, That's what's going to stick in their heads. And again, just like I said in my last video, it's not that all black people do that. It's that when they do see people doing certain things, they tend to be black. Not all black people, or even most black people, sag their pants. But usually, when you do see sagging pants, it's on a black person. And I said usually, so spare me all the stories about all your white friends who sag their pants. But anyway, the point is, a lot of white people who don't have regular contact with black people have an image of what black is in their minds, and it's not positive. So when they do run across a black person that quote-unquote acts like them, they're surprised. And they very well may say something like, "You don't act like the other blacks." And they think that they're complimenting you because their idea of what it means to act black is Antoine Dodson. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter that most black people don't act like that, because people like that are the ones who get the most attention, and people like that are the ones that people tend to remember. Alright, then you have whites who actually are racist, and if they see another white person doing something negative, they'll say that that white person is acting black, or acting like an N-word. For example, Mel Gibson. He didn't like that his girl was dressing sexy, and he insinuated that it was going to cause her to get gang raped. Apparently, when Mr. Gibson thinks of gang rape, he thinks of black guys. Or if a white person is on welfare, another white person might say, "Oh, you're on welfare just like a black woman." And unfortunately, when you look at statistics for stuff like that, a lot of times you'll find that black people do that thing a lot, or they do it disproportionate to their numbers. And again, the stats won't apply to all black people, or even most. But again, unfortunately, it's out of proportion with our numbers. And again, a lot of times these people are the most visible. Stereotypes don't just come out of thin air. They're based on something. And unfortunately, until we're able to take our image back over in the media and handle the people who are tarnishing our day-to-day contact image, black is going to continue to be associated with negative things. That said, if someone's committing armed robbery, a white person for example, and then somebody says that that person is acting black because they're committing armed robbery, in that situation, I could understand why someone would ask, well, what do you mean by acting black? How is committing robbery acting black? But again, when I made that first video, I wasn't addressing situations like that. I was talking about black people who sound like a white person when they talk. They listen to heavy metal and don't hang around any black people, but then want to get on camera and ask, why do people say I act white? Oh, gee, I don't know. But anyway, when responding to someone who is associating being black with something negative, try to handle the situation as intelligently as possible. Don't let yourself respond with some knee-jerk emotional reaction that's going to further leave a bad taste in the person's mouth about black people. You might want to have some stats ready and be able to say, oh, you know, well, only 2% of black people do that in their whole lives, or something like that. Or you could even diffuse it with a joke. I had a white guy say to me once, and no, we were not dating. He said, if you and me have kids, they'll be smart and athletic. Now sure, I could have totally gone off on him, but what would that have proven? So I just looked at him and said, oh, so you're pretty good at sports? When I said that, that made him think, and he realized that what he said was kind of messed up. And I made him realize without getting nasty with him. And just to fully disclose the story, he did explain to me after that what he meant was that he's smart and I'm smart, plus I'm athletic, so the kids would be smart and athletic. Now, I don't know if that was him backpedaling or whatever, but that's what he said. But anyway, try to handle situations like that calmly and tactfully. It'll make a much better impression than, oh, motherfucker, what you mean by that? You really can put somebody in their place without getting loud, getting nasty, or being indignant.
What does it mean when you sit in the second seat in Section C? It means your seat is too sexy. Now, what does it mean when you turn love upside down? Well, I can show you better than I can tell you. Go to turnloveupsidedown.com.